So if you love vintage containers just like me, then this is the tutorial just for you. And welcome back. Now this time we're looking at one of the vintage containers again, and I've been into my vintage collection. Got out this gorgeous Silvac vase, which is almost a creamy toned colour. And this week we're not using floral foam. I've gone again with the more sustainable and the environmentally friendly wire netting. And just like I did in the previous video, which I'll just link here in the cards, I've rolled the chicken wire over on itself so that I have 2 or 3 layers. So when I insert the flowers in, they're not going to fall out and hopefully they won't move around. That's nice and secure in there. Under normal circumstances, I would have some water in there. But because I'm tipping it forward occasionally for you to see, we don't want to have any accidents. This week I'm using a mixed colour combination, and it's a really trendy style of arranging that's having a bit of a resurgence at the moment in the floristry and flower arranging world. Now don't forget, if you're enjoying the tutorials, to subscribe. Hit that bell to be notified every time I upload a new tutorial. And if you've got a question or a comment, please add it in the box below, and I'll try my best to answer it. Now, a few weeks ago, when I did a Valentine's Day arrangement, I had this amazing coloured rose, which this is actually a supermarket rose, but it's very much like a rose that we can buy as a florist that we call Miss Piggy. And I'm going to reuse the same colour again because I really enjoyed it and I loved the subtleness of the colour. It's almost two-tone. If you look right into the centre, it's got dark peaches and a very pale sort of apricot pink towards the middle. So a really pretty flower. And I've got some bits and pieces that we haven't used before, and we'll talk through those as we go along. I've only got a small piece of foliage. I've got some of the Picea, which is like a fir tree. I haven't quite decided yet if I'm going to use it. It's the style of arrangement where you leave the flowers speak for themselves. I might find that I don't actually need to use the greenery at all. So I'm going to start again by creating that focal placement there in the middle. And this wonderful rose works really well with purples and blues. So I'm going to introduce some dried lavender. So again, if you're at home and you've got some dried materials, they can always be incorporated into a floral design. And I've also got something that you might not be familiar with. Dried flowers, locally grown flowers, are having a huge comeback in wedding work at the moment. So I use quite a lot of this Honesty, and it gives me a really good link with my colour of my container as well. Okay, so let's start. Imagine that the vase is filled with water all the way to the top. And bear in mind that I've used these roses in a previous arrangement, so they are already cut short, but they're going to work equally as well in this design. So I'm just going to feed them through. You can see quite simply that the wire netting holds them into place. You haven't got to worry about the floral foam disintegrating as you add more flowers to it, and you haven't got to worry about the disposal of the floral foam as well. So this is maybe a more environmentally friendly way of arranging flowers. And I'm going to start with the roses as almost a focal sort of point in the front. I've only got a few different types of flowers. I haven't got a massive selection, so we'll see how it works together. With this style of arranging, the chicken wire almost predicts where your flowers are going to go and has the benefit of you being able to take the flowers out and put them back in as many times as you want. Now I've tried to create flowers on 3 different levels, and that will give you the depth that you need in the flower arrangement to give it that 3-dimensional effect. If you put everything in flat on the same level, your design doesn't look as natural as it should be. Now I've got quite a heavy concentration of that unusual sort of peachy pink colour. And now what I'm going to do is break it up with some of this lime green. If you haven't seen this one before, this is a Hypericum berry. This is a commercially available product, but you can get Hypericum to grow in the garden, but possibly not in the colour that I've got here today. So we're going to break up some of that colour with the berry. And I've removed quite a lot of the foliage there off the base. And I'm just looking to create an outline shape. Now at the moment, I don't really know where that shape is going to lead me. Some of my flowers have a slight curve, so we might end up with that crescent shape. I'm going to see if I can angle one side down slightly so we see a variation in shapes, but it's really going to depend on the length of the flowers I've got and the shape of them. So at the moment, all my flower material is towards the front and we don't have anything towards the back. So I'm going to use some of the roses towards the back. This is important with a raised container like this because we need to have actual balance. The last thing I want to do is to create a wonderful arrangement and then it all fall over right at the very end. So that weight of the flowers, of course we'll have the added weight of the water as well, but you need to have actual weight of your flowers at the back so that your design doesn't tip forward. We do also have to have it on the sides, but in this style, it's really important to have it at the back. Okay, so we've got some round flowers at the front with the rose. We've got a different type of shape flowers with the berry. Now I'm going to introduce some of the lavender. And this is dried lavender, but it could be fresh lavender if you've got some in the garden. It could be, we're coming into the spring now, so this could be something like a muscari or a little daffodil. And arranging in this wire netting method is really good for those soft stems. So as we come more into the spring, the daffodils, the tulips, irises in the garden, muscari, hellebores you might have already, they work really well in this type of design. They're not great lovers of floral foam. I love this colour combination together. I really enjoy the lavender colour alongside that pinky toned rose. And then we've got that pop of colour then from the Hypericum berry. And just as you look at the front there, I'm going to pop a Hypericum into the back. And you can see that I'm removing all of the foliage there so that we've got clean stems going into the water. We don't want to contaminate the water in the vase. So that works really well there at the back. And you can see at the moment, not any particular outline shape forming, but some interesting colours and textures. And if I just take this back to the front, now this tends to be my more dominant focal flower. I'm going to lift it up slightly. And you'll see that I've got my more dominant flower over the point of the vase, because the point of the vase is a more attractive way of looking at the vase than the flat front-on base of the container. So the pointed shape makes your eye travel back towards the back of the design rather than that very flat fronted design. So you might be thinking, she hasn't got her container straight, but there's a reasoning behind my method. So we've got slightly longer roses now, and remember, I'm limited to the length of the flowers that I have. And you know, if you're at home and you've got flowers and they're quite short stem because you've used them in a previous design, then if you want to experiment, just make a smaller design with the materials that you've already got. Now I'm going to introduce that line material or a different shape flower. So this time it's a snapdragon or an Anthirihum. And these are going to work really well on the outside. It's going to elongate my design and give me an outline shape. And this is now where my shape is going to form, my outline shape is going to form. And you know, geometric shapes that we use quite often in flower arranging came about when foam was invented in the 60s. Prior to that, flower arranging was more natural and followed the shape of the flowers. Just got to concentrate when I'm putting this one in there we are. With this style of arranging, we're not worrying too much about an overall shape. We're just trying to show every flower that's in the arrangement and appreciate every shape and flower and texture that we've got. And if you think back to days gone by when flowers were arranged from the garden, you wouldn't have been able to go to the supermarket and purchase a particular flower combination or a particular colour selection. You would have just used what you had available to you in the garden. and you would have made the best of what you had. And this is what this style of arranging is about. It's about making a beautiful design with the materials that you can get hold of. Now I think this happens to be my favourite colour combination at the moment. Quite unusual, a lilac with a peachy sort of pink, but I think they're wonderful together. And remember, I've worked from the centre out. I've not worried about creating an overall shape. And I've got one more of the Snapdragon. And I think, now what you can't do in flower arranging where you've got the chicken wire like I've done here is we can't put any lateral placements in. You can do that with floral foam, you can get your positions to come out at the side, but the only way I can arrange is to place it down into the wire netting. So I'm trying to think where this flower is going to go in the arrangement so that you can see it to its best advantage. And I think it's going to have to come around more towards the back. Now there's nothing wrong with you swapping and changing any flowers around that you've already put into the design. If you find that maybe the rose you've put in at the front needs to be moved to make space for another flower, then that's okay to do. And of course you haven't got to worry about holes being in the floral foam either. So that's coming along quite nicely. Now my instinct is to say that the design is a bit small for my container. My container is the more dominant part, and ideally the flowers need to be the most dominant part of the design. So I need to make it a little bit longer or a bit taller. And this is where I'm going to start using this wonderful Honesty. It's got that almost translucent look to it. So it's not a heavy flower. It's not going to be too dominant and too overpowering. And I've got nice long stems. So I can now look at extending the size of my arrangement. And I've done that same thing as I often talk to you about. Rather than using the Honesty flat on, where you've got lots and lots of flower material, I've turned it sideways. It's then more slimline and not so heavy, I suppose, in relation to the design, because the design is lightweight, very delicate. Okay, let's try and feed our way in. Gives me some height. And now what we don't have to worry about so much with the Honesty, because it's dried, if I wanted to go in sideways, I can feed it through the wire netting. It's not like the fresh flowers where I have to make sure it's deep in the vase. So I can use the Honesty now to give me a little bit more length on the side. The chicken wire can be used over and over and over again. It's a good idea to sterilise it after you've used it so you don't have contamination from previous flowers. And I'm just going to work my way. And at the moment, I'm just looking at the design and seeing which side needs more colour or which side needs more flowers. We've got a bit of a crescent shape forming, so quite natural, nothing too heavy. And at the moment, I don't have any of this white colour in towards the centre. And I'm going to introduce just some towards the front. It will help link it all together. We don't want those two big pointed sort of arms there on the outside. This is going to work much better if I have it towards the centre. Just going to spread the roses out a little bit so there's room for them to open up. We don't want to squash anything in too tightly. How's that so far? Now I've brought flowers to the back as well. We mentioned the weight. There is a little bit of gap still at the back there to fill in, but we can sort that out in just a second. I wasn't sure in the beginning if I was going to introduce any foliage to the design, but what I do have is the lovely Molucella, and this is a flower that turns towards the light, so you can see it has a bit of a bend on the end. So I'm going to introduce this onto one side, and then on the opposite side give me some of the same colour and a link with the colour. I'm going to use the foliage. Now the Molucella, or the Bells of Ireland, is a bract, so it's a modified leaf, and the flower on it is this very small Not quite sure if the camera will pick it up, but there is a very small white little flower in the centre there. That's the flower, the rest of it is the leaf. And it's a member of the mint family, so it has a wonderful perfume to it. And this now has really elongated my sides. Just going to try and sneak this one in underneath. I think we'll have to remove, I'm just going to remove one of the snapdragons that I put in at the very beginning. That's going to give me more room to put this second piece of the Molucella in. And hopefully now that's really given me an exaggerated curve on the one side. Yeah, so I'm liking that. That's worked out really well. Now, because I have greenery on this side, I'd like to, if possible, bring some greenery onto the opposite side. And I have the Picea, which is a form of like a Christmas tree. It's like a fir tree. And its natural instinct is to bend downwards. So if I try to put it in the opposite direction, it doesn't work particularly well. But its natural way of growing and falling is to go downwards. So for me, that's going to work really well on this side, so that I've counterbalancing the green on that side and bring in some downward movement on the opposite side. Okay, so now it does help to stand back occasionally to see how the design is coming together. Sometimes it becomes a bit jumbled and your flowers end up too close together. So take a step back occasionally and have a really good look from far away. And what I really want to do here, that's better, is I just wanted to separate off the two green Molucella here on that side. Now at the moment, I'm not quite sure whether this is too long. So when I photograph it later, and I'll have a look at it through the camera lens, if I decide this is too long and too heavy, I'll cut it a bit shorter. Sometimes you've really got to step back and look at it. So I'm going to bring a bit more of the greenery around towards the front, just again so we've got a bit of a colour link between the front and the side. The area that's a bit lacking is here, and so I'm going to add something in there. At the moment I think it's going to be, let me think. I think it's going to be some more of the greenery, but a straighter piece. If we look at this one, it's not the best shape. But if I get rid of these side pieces, then I can use this section of the leaf to fit in that gap there where I feel we have a bit of a blank sort of section. Okay, so if I show you that for a minute, can you see how this one is shooting off in a direction that I don't want it to go? It's making your eye travel away from the arrangement, whereas I want it to go up this way. So that's much better now I've removed. Now I do have one more of the green Hypericum, and this one has a slight curve to it, so this is going to work really well in this position up high. It's going to draw my eye up towards the tallest flower as well, and I think hopefully that's worked really well. So what I'm going to do in the centre, I've got a choice now between one of the Anthirihums or a rose, and I think the rose is going to work much better there towards the centre. So this one is going to draw your eye away. That lovely big rose there is going to strengthen my focal point. And again, I've pushed it down a little lower so that we have recession and we have flowers at different heights. So what do we think at that stage? Is that something that you enjoy? Now you can make a comment if you went at this stage. Is my foliage too long on that side? Just moved it so we have the plain wall behind, and you can comment in the box below whether you think this is too long on that side. But overall, again, a design with not a huge amount of foliage. We're looking at far more traditional designs using a vintage container, and this is a style that I really love. So if you've enjoyed this style, please comment in the box below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Hit that bell if you want to be notified every time I upload a new tutorial, and tell your friends, like and share. Let's help this channel grow and get to more people all throughout the world. So thanks for watching, and bye for now.